one of the few people who are watching a show that's largely about gaming, and you haven't heard. Long story short, EA put women prominently on the forefront of their advertising and the forefront of the battle lines in the front lines of battle in World War II, which obviously you don't have to be a World War II historian to know that that was not the case for the Allies, 100%. And people had an issue with that from an authenticity standpoint because it was a very, very, very largely male war when it comes to the infantry. And, you know, how historically accurate a game needs to be in order to get that feeling that the game is supposed to give you is up for debate. It's interesting because we are coming from a game, Red Dead Redemption, that does give us that feeling because of those nuances that it adds in that we at least think were the case back then. But how much of that has to be there is up for debate. What's not up for debate is how EA responded by basically saying, you guys are uneducated, and if you don't like the game, don't buy it. And if you look at the comment section of any Battlefield review, feedback video, except for the few Battlefield channels that are just like, we love this game, no hate here, we don't care, we play it every year, this is what my channel's about. The neutral channels that cover other stuff, the whole comment section is, they told us not to buy it, they told us not to buy it. I think we're coming to a place where companies have to have a certain amount of consideration when they're talking to their consumer base, because they will hate not buy your game. You know, this is a hate rejection, because what I'm hearing from the gameplay is that the gameplay is largely good. Now, I hear the game has other issues in that it wasn't totally complete.
Yes.
Right? Like
that's actually the biggest gripe that I hear about it, because the gameplay itself, and I've played it, the gameplay itself is not bad. It's very
most people agree that it's good gameplay.
It's very Battlefield, right?
Yeah.
I just don't like Battlefield's gameplay as much as I like Call of Duty. I hate the shooting. The shooting, the aiming it's just, I never like the way it feels.
It also needs to be said that Call of Duty is an extension of the Rainbow Six style gameplay, where it's more squad-based conflict as opposed to war-based conflict. Mm-hmm. So there's a loop of die respawn in a war game that is very different from the, managing engagements of COD or particularly Blackout, or when you're going for domination, seek and destroy, or a Rainbow Six game, which is more gadget based, not as much shooting based, but still those games are in the same family. Whereas Battlefield, when you play Battlefield, it does feel very different from other games because you're in a war. Yeah. It's a thing to be in, like, with your crew and have a tank roll by and say, oh, we just have to run from this. That's not something you really encounter in most Destiny, Call of Duty style shooters. Maybe for a moment with a super or a helicopter, but not for an entire side of the map.
Yeah, and I don't know, I just don't dig it as much. But I will say this, the visually, now Call of Duty is a nice looking game, but visually there's no comparison. Battlefield is at least 2 levels better looking than Call of Duty. I mean, Battlefield's beautiful. It's probably the best looking. I want to
add some little forgiveness for Call of Duty, for Call of Duty from the visual standpoint, because there's gaming has changed, right? Like back in 2003 or so, it was fidelity. Get the game to look as good as possible. But since we've crossed over into the 60 frames and even 144 frames per second threshold, performance has become more important than visual, fidelity. And I think Call of Duty, and this is even though Call of Duty is not the subject, this is something that needs to be said. Call of Duty is as close to a PC shooter you can get on console. Mm-hmm. That's such a remarkable achievement that for the game to look as good as it does, but play that well, I think it's hard to compare it to a game that doesn't perform as well.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean, Call of Duty is so smooth.
so sharp.
I mean,
It's just the sharpest,
it's so.
crispiest.
I mean, it's like it's the most dependable shooter on console that you can
Yeah,
play. I mean, it's like you get very few. What was that? You get very few of those. If you got killed, you know why.
right.
You
You
know what
know,
I'm saying?
it's a performance accomplishment.
Yes.
Like, it's funny because this is what I consider one of the douchiest Call of Duty games. Like, when you play your operations, you're just like, hey, I'm, chewing tobacco and
Yeah.
talking about football.
Yeah.
Go after your objective. I'm like, oh my God. Man, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's very different from Rainbow Six.
Yeah.
Which is more military. We're taking this kind of seriously. Which in the douchiness is not generally the kind of Sprite, Mountain Dew, Doritos flavor that they add to the game.
Right.
But I will say, I have not had a second of Call of Duty Black Ops 4 that didn't feel good.
Yeah.
Like, not a second of it.
Not a second.
Like, it just, everything is rewarding to do. I think it's actually, and people like to hate on Call of Duty and Activision and all that stuff, but in this scenario, I think they put out, for what it is, a high performing benchmark for console shooters.
Yeah, I mean, if it had a campaign mode that was good,
yeah,
I think it would be a perfect 10.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, yeah. That's the only thing.
Said, I agree with you there. So that having been said, what's your take on the Battlefield sales controversy issue?
Well, I think you're correct. In terms of, especially now, man, the consumers are more empowered now than they have ever been. Right? They understand the power of social media. They understand the power of their voice. They've seen the ability to wreck projects. EA has seen it with Star Wars Battlefront. They know how this works. I think it was definitely a slip of the tongue or a mistake to give off the impression that you were saying, if you don't like it, buy it, don't buy it. I think that's a mistake. But I do like developers taking that stance behind closed doors, right? Because I do think there can be a time period where you can listen too much to the community. And you become hyper reactive to every complaint. I think 2K is guilty of that a lot. I think there are times when you need to allow your community to get used to what you did with whatever you just done with your game. And then after a certain period, then you go back and you revisit and say, is this really a problem? Or was this growing pains, or was this an adjustment or transition period? I think that's really something that, and so when you're in that discovery segment of your development or post development, I think it's good to not be quiet, because you have to let them know that you're hearing them, but you definitely don't want to say, it's what it is. If you don't like it, don't buy it. You definitely don't want to say that, but not jumping and going, okay, let us fix it. Okay, let's get it. And sometimes it feels like some developers get into that.
Well, I think this is a complex issue, B, because I think there's very different scenarios going on here. First and foremost, what they did at EA, and there's a difference between the publisher and the developer, right? But the publisher came out and spoke for the developer and said things that were, objectively disrespectful.
Yes.
Even if they were in response to things that were disrespectful, the problem is the community is literally millions of people. So if you want to find disrespect to respond to, you can find it no matter what. If you want to find people who are more measured to respond to, you can also find that. The community, in my experience, has never been 100% one way or 100% the other.
Never. I mean,
so when you respond,
Red Dead ain't even 100% one way.
Exactly, and that game is basically perfect, right?
Yes. Right.
Aside from a few controller issues, that game is stellar. I mean, it's absolutely stellar. All of us basically love it. And it's still not 100%.
Right.
So you as a developer, as a singular voice, or publisher, as a singular voice, you are choosing to whom you are responding.
Yes.
which makes your sin of rudeness greater than that of the community, because the community is not a collective.
Oh, 20-second timeout, because that is actually, that's a lesson right there. That is a lesson to every person on social media with a large platform. When you respond, you have the choice to decide who to respond to. And when you choose to respond to the negative person, your response is being viewed and heard by everyone, the negative, the positive, and the people on the fence. So this goes for you if you have a Twitter account that has 17,000 followers, a Twitter account that has 50,000 followers. When you get that troll that comes in and attacks you, if you get so irritated with that troll that you come back rude at that troll, people are not going to really think about what the troll said, because you're bigger than the troll. They're going to hear what you said and going to be like, wow, why was he, that was kind of, so that's how you talk to your fans?
And to emphasize that point, B, what I see, and for people who are new to this show, I'm a comic book artist. I work for Marvel, DC, Image, most of the major publishers. And I see this in my industry a lot. People, when they respond to these trolls, they sometimes at everybody.
Yeah.
So it's bad enough if you reply to the troll rudely. Depending on how high up you are, how many followers you have, greater and greater, issue of sin, because you're speaking to one person and all these other people are hearing it. But when you respond to that person semi-anonymously and you're just rude out into the room because this person has either upset you or, triggered you in some way, or you don't want to make them famous, so you don't want to at them, whatever it may be, all everybody else sees is that side of you.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have spoken for all of you with this one thing against a person who does not speak for all of your listeners.
Yes.
Right?
That's so real. That's so real, because even down on my, down to my level from where EA is, sometimes I'm sitting here, right? And I got people say, I got a person here and there saying something here, this, that, and whatever. You got a troll coming here. And sometimes you're, especially if you are because whoever it was that responded on EA's behalf there is probably a little bit of a get off me kind of a person. Whoever typed that tweet, that's kind of who they are, right? And they take pride in where they are and they want people to get off their back. And I'm that way. So sometimes I see things and my first response is to, bring it back, but the thing of it is like you just said, that's so real, man, because it really, you're that's why you'll get people, and this actually isn't really as a pet peeve of mine, but you'll get people telling you stuff like, oh man, you're better than that. You know what I'm saying? Because they have an image of you. Right. And even though you're responding to something someone did to you, it's still taking you beneath where you were. You know what I'm saying? Beneath who you were supposed to be to that person or to that group of people. So that's real, actually. That's definitely real. And that's something that EA as a publisher ran afoul of. And then the other thing of it is, for them, they have a dual responsibility, which is what you're saying. Like for me, I'm responsible for myself and how I conduct myself. I'm an independent contractor, so even though my contract currently is with Forbes, I represent myself for what I say on my Twitter account. But for EA, when you're coming out saying this stuff that you're saying, you're representing EA, but you're also representing EA Dice, which is the development studio, and they may not feel that way.
Oh, well, and that's the crazy thing, right? Like you have all of these hardworking artists, engineers, you know what I mean? Developers, producers, who are putting this thing together. They might just love their part of it. Mm-hmm. There's somebody out there who spent hours and hours making sure that an ammo pack looked good. Mm-hmm. Hours. There's no way an ammo pack gets done in 5 or 10 minutes, guys.
Yeah.
It takes hours just for that ammo pack.
Yeah.
And there's people who spent weeks on mud.
Yeah.
This is just a person who loves making mud look realistic.
Yeah.
And now their job performance has been completely flushed down the toilet because of an error in leadership.
Yep. Because one person got in their feelings
and popped off at the entire community.
Yeah.
And literally told them, you're uneducated, don't buy the game. That's a mistake that game developers cannot afford to make going forward. I want to talk a little bit about what you were talking about with 2K.
Mm-hmm.
It is a complicated dance to know how to listen to your community.
Mm-hmm.
It can be done well and it can be done poorly. Because the same way we said you can find rude opinions out in millions of people, you can find or moderate opinions. You can also find good ideas and bad ideas. There's no way you can look at the 2K community, write down everything they said, and then do it. Because literally you'd have to make 4 or 5 different versions of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Because people want different things. So what 2K has to struggle with is they don't have a mechanism for absorbing that information and deciding what's best for the game. And they also have a very big game that is a bunch of different things. So what's good for my team isn't always going to be good for the neighborhood.
Right.
And what's good for Pro-Am isn't always going to be good for my league. So they have to figure out, how to split the difference. And what 2K does is they do the thing that I think that they do that's bad is what you said. They're very reactionary because they have no way to measure how the community is interpreting the information, and they don't always give out the information. So sometimes
rarely.
Right.
Yeah, and
sometimes the community needs to know.
Mm-hmm.
We changed the shooting. We changed the passing. We changed the rebounding.
Yeah.
For instance, last year, they completely busted bounce passes and flashy passes.
Mm-hmm.
They were a turnover. All the time. They were slow. They were horrible. This year, flashy passes and bounce passes are much better. But the community, if you're playing in a game with people, you're not going to throw something that's guaranteed to be a turnover over and over and over again in a competitive environment. We have 4 other people trying to win. So
right.
It takes time, especially when you're making characters and their ratings aren't all the way up yet. Their badges aren't all the way up yet, right? So it takes time for the community to develop and adapt to these things. So when you change the passing and the stealing before that adaptation has happened, that's your inability to listen to the community. There's other games, like, say, Destiny, that they took their time doing it, but their listening to the community was very, very accurate and on point. And if you go to the Destiny forums or feedback or the community, they are in a completely different and much better place now after Forsaken than they were at the launch of Destiny 2.
Yeah.
So that's a situation where they completely turned the game around. No Man's Sky, they saw what they did wrong, completely turned the game around. That's a very good game now. If you guys don't have a No Man's Sky, go on. If you're a space nerd, go on and get it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful, unique gaming experience that you can have. And I also have, Elite Dangerous, and I still recommend No Man's Sky. I think they're both good games. So, that's an issue of the listening part of community management. EA had a problem with the talking part.
Yeah.
How could I be weak? I'm rather unique.